All right, guys, pre-AP biology. This is the last lecture or last lecture video of the first semester. So we're going to finish things off today and this unit 4, talking a little bit more about cell reproduction. And we're going to shift gears a little bit today and talk a little bit about a process called meiosis. Now, meiosis sounds a little bit like mitosis, but it really is a completely different thing. So, I don't want you to confuse meiosis with mitosis because they kind of are a lot different from each other. Now, as a quick review, the last couple lectures, we've talked a lot about the cell cycle. And again, the cell cycle is kind of the combination of events that includes interphase, right? G1, G2, S phase, mitosis, which is the division of the nucleus, and then finally cytokinesis, which is the division of the cell. So, these three things, um, even though they're different in their own ways, they're all components of the cell cycle. And that basically is how somatic cells, like our regular body cells, get produced. Okay, so they go through a cell cycle to get produced. Meiosis is the production of sex cells. All right, it's the production of gametes. So we learned earlier that somatic cells and gametes are very different from each other. I mean, yeah, they're body cell, or they make up cells in our body, but they are very different as far as chromosome number goes. All right, so when we're talking about meiosis, the production of these cells, we need to talk a lot about chromosome number and how that kind of takes a part of the process of meiosis. All right, there's a couple things that we have to remember. All right, the first thing is that, again, somatic cells are diploid, right? So, stomach cells and skin cells and blood cells, they have 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. All right, so that's something that we have to remember. Whereas gametes, right, sex cells, have 23 individual chromosomes, 0 pairs. All right, so there is a big difference between somatic cells and sex cells. All right, so if we're talking about a cell cycle, right, we're talking about producing somatic cells, we're producing cells that have 46 chromosomes. Whereas if we're talking about meiosis and producing sex cells, we're talking about producing cells that have 23 chromosomes. All right, another thing that I think is kind of an important thing to know is that meiosis only takes place in certain areas of the body. All right, we call these areas gonads. They're kind of specialized structures in our body that are designed to produce sex cells. So in females, female gonads are called ovaries. They have a name. And in males, we call them testes. So again, these are the two areas of our body that produce our sex cells or produce our gametes. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the process of meiosis. So this is just kind of a general overview. Towards the end of the video today, I'll talk about some of the differences between males and females. But overall, kind of generally, I don't care if it's males or females. We're always going to start with a diploid cell, right? Remember, diploid is 46, which is 2 times the haploid number. So, if you're a female, females have what we call germ cells in their ovaries. Males, we have germ cells in our testes. These are diploid cells, but these are the cells that are going to produce our sex cell. They're going to produce our gametes. So the first thing that has to happen during meiosis is this. I'll just take a look at this picture here. Okay. We went from a diploid cell, 2N, right, 46 chromosomes, to a cell that now has 4 times the haploid number. So again, we went from 46 to 92. Now, how does that happen? Well, it just happens when DNA just copies itself. So basically, in this first step of meiosis, we get DNA replication. So all the chromosomes copy themselves. So 46, now we have 92. All right, so that happens in males. It also happens in females. Okay. Now, the next thing that happens is a cell division. So we've got this cell here with 92 chromosomes, and if it divides, we're going to get 2 cells with 46. Okay, so if you kind of think about it, this whole process that we've just kind of gone over up to this point, this really is just like a cell cycle, right? In a cell cycle, right, in interphase, all the chromosomes get copied, and then the cell eventually splits, like during cytokinesis. So this is basically just like one big cell division. Okay, now the first time the cell splits, we call it meiosis one. It's just the first of 2 cell divisions. Now, if you look at here at the end, we have another cell division. So these 2 diploid cells here, each divided to form 4 cells that are all haploid. Now, these are called daughter cells. I don't care if it's a male or a female. We call them daughter cells. But this happens in everybody. Again, I don't care if you're a male or a female. Now, the thing here in this final cell division, okay, this is called meiosis 2. I want us to understand that in meiosis 2, there was no DNA replication. So this step here, that happened before meiosis 1, it doesn't happen again. So what happens is, for example, this cell that has 46 chromosomes, they don't replicate again. They just divide. So for example, in this cell, you've got 2 number 1s, 2 number 2s, 2 number 3s. One of each pair goes to this cell, and one of each pair goes to this cell. So for example, in this daughter cell, you have 1 number 1, 1 number 2, 1 number 3, etc. In this daughter cell, you have the same thing, okay? And the same thing that happens down here. So what we end up getting is these 4 haploid cells that resulted from one diploid cell undergoing 2 splits, right? It's split once here, that's meiosis 1, and then each one of those split again. So that is meiosis 2. All right, so that's just kind of a general overview of meiosis. Now, to look a little bit closer at it, all right, let's take a look up here at this cell here. Okay, so I know that this is our germ cell, and this is a diploid cell, right? So we know that diploid has has 46 chromosomes, has that diploid number. Now we're not seeing all 46 chromosomes here. We're just seeing 2. So let's just pick a pair. Let's say that this is pair number 7, right? In everybody's diploid cells, you got 1 number 7 that you got from your mom, you got 1 number 7 from your dad. So there's your 2 number 7s. Now, during meiosis, those chromosomes will replicate. So now, instead of having 2 chromosome number 7s, we now have 4. All right, so we're going to double the amount of DNA, double the amount of chromosomes. And then we get our first cell division, right? We get meiosis 1. So 2 of those number 7s go to one cell, 2 of them go to another. And then we have meiosis 2. Now, again, before meiosis 2, we don't get replication again. So here's just where the chromosomes just split. So one of them goes to this cell, one of them goes to this one, same thing over here. Okay, so we end up getting 4 cells, and each of them has one number 7 chromosome, or number 22, or number 23, or whatever it is. Okay, so again, in both males and females, 4 haploid cells result from one diploid cell. So know what we start with, know what we end with, and how do we get there. Okay, it's a process. It says here, meiosis is also known as reduction division. I want you to think about that. Reduction division. So in this process, what's being reduced? Well, what's being reduced is the chromosome number, right? We're going from cells that have 46 chromosomes to cells that have 23. So we're reducing the number of chromosomes, even though the cell is dividing. In fact, it divides twice. It divides during meiosis 1, and it divides during meiosis 2. So reduction division, think about what's being reduced as the cell is dividing. Okay, that's why we call it that. All right, now to take a look at the differences between males and females. All right, we're going to take a look at females first. So girls, we're talking about you. Guys, we should learn about this. So pay attention, okay? So again, this is meiosis. This is how it occurs in females. So notice how we have a diploid cell. Then we get a 4N cell, right? That's where our replication happens. Then we get our first cell division, right? There's our meiosis 1. And then we get our second cell division. Now, it looks kind of bizarre here at the end. We'll come back to that. So there's some terminology here, okay? This is called an oogonia. Don't worry so much about that, all right? But once it replicates, all that DNA replicates, we call it a primary oocyte. That's the name for it. All right, once that primary oocyte divides, then we have 2 secondary oocytes. Oocytes are a big fancy word for egg cells. Okay, they're going to become egg cells. Now then we have this, we have our second cell division. This is meiosis 2. Well, you'll notice something that kind of strange that happens. This cell, this secondary oocyte, when it splits, it forms something called an ova. An ova is a mature egg. Like, it will be one of your egg cells, girls. And egg cells are the cell that can get fertilized during reproduction. So this cell here, if it's released, from your ovaries, and that happens during the menstrual cycle, and we'll talk about that second semester. But if this egg is released by your ovaries, it can get fertilized by a sperm cell. And if it gets fertilized by a sperm cell, then you can have a baby. Okay. Now, the other cell here that gets produced is called a polar body. Now, a polar body, you'll notice the size of it. It is much smaller. In fact, this cell is kind of sacrificed by the female body. Females are all about quality. They want to produce a quality egg, even if it means the expense of another cell. This polar body will never be fertilized by a sperm cell. In fact, it's just kind of like cellular garbage. I mean, in fact, girls, your bodies just kind of reject these things, and eventually, your immune system will just take care of them and get rid of them. So this is not going to turn into an egg. And then this other secondary oocyte here, when it splits, it forms 2 more polar bodies. So one thing I want you to remember about these polar bodies is they will never mature into a real egg. But this cell here, this ova, it will. Okay, and it could get fertilized if there's sperm cells, in the female reproductive system. So if that happens, then it could become a baby. All right. So what I want you to know here is we have one diploid cell. We do get four haploid cells, but only one of them is going to make it to full maturity, whereas the other three aren't. So you get one egg and three polar bodies. Okay. All right. Now let's go to the guy's side. Fortunately, guys, you're much less complicated, all right, than the girl's side. So boys' side, a little bit easier to understand. So again, take a look at the picture. You've got a diploid cell, and then all the DNA replicates, so it goes to four ends, just like we did before. And then we have our first cell division, right? There's meiosis one. So that's you end up with these two diploid cells. Now these are called secondary spermatocytes. So notice the similarities between males and females. And really up to this point, in fact, if I just put a line here, okay, everything above the line is pretty much the same in males and females, other than we have some different vocabulary. But now look at what happens below the line. All right, these two secondary spermatocytes, when they split, they form four sperm cells. So in males, it's all about quantity. In females, it's all about quality. The female reproductive system, it's just all it wants to do is produce this one quality egg from that original cell. So you get one egg, three polarized. Whereas in males, from that one original cell, you get four sperm cells. And each one of these are capable of fertilizing a female's egg, right? So I want us to know like the differences here in the products, right? In males, you get four sperms. In females, you get one egg and three polar bodies. It's still four cells in both. They're all haploid, but there are some differences there between the two. All right, so study this. Okay, understand what meiosis is. It's the production of sex cells. It does differ slightly between males and females, but the big picture, okay, taking a diploid cell, okay, and producing four haploid cells. That's what meiosis is. Okay. All right, guys, have a good day. I will talk to you soon.